So, Ahenk, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Eric. Can I share my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Let me do it full screen, so it's going to be bigger. Okay. So can you see it? Okay, great. First of all, thank you very much for this nice introduction. And thank you and Ingo so much for your invitation to this colloquium, because this will be a great opportunity for me to discuss our recent studies research here with this audience. Let me begin my talk with a brief introduction what our research group in Yaşar University, my colleagues, my students and I undertake nowadays, because I think such an introduction would provide a good framework for the things that I'm going to talk about today throughout my presentation. So what I show you in this slide are the research projects that we recently completed and also started to tackle with as Space and Digital Culture Research Group. That is the title that we chose for our group here, for our colleagues. And I am the coordinator of that research group. The first one that you see here is the one called the use of space for transmediated identity practices. And since I will predominantly be talking about this one throughout the presentation, I'm not going to go into details very much on this one right now. The second one, digitizing Lefebvre's spatial triad, has a special importance for us because it was in fact our very first research on the relationship between digital technologies and architectural and urban space, and also the first one that we attempted to visit the theoretical framework of production of space for digital media that I'm going to talk about today. What we did in this project was the digitization of two social housing projects, inhabitants' spatial stories regarding the forced migration process that they had to live through in Izmir here. We collected their memories of previous and current living conditions. We organized some questionnaires and also recorded some voices and images. And we use them to populate the website of the project, which provides the visitors with the opportunity of reading, listening, and watching all this information. What you see here is just a snapshot of this website. Sorry, it is Turkish, but these are some basic keywords that we found there. And through those keywords, it is possible to look at the three different layers of these two social housing projects. For instance, one is malzeme in Turkish, meaning material. So if you just write down that keyword, you're going to find all the recorded images or official documents, or even local newspaper news about especially that keyword. So with those layers, we aim to delve into the built environment with different perspectives, such as it is possible to look at those social housing projects with just inhabitants' perspectives, or designers' perspectives, or even administrative perspective. The third one, the last two are our ongoing projects. The third one is about the effects of digital reproduction of space on the concepts of memory and memorialization. This is important for me, especially this one, because with this, I try to combine my two main interests, academic interests, on the same layer. I mean, because on the one hand, I focused on during my PhD and during my postdoc studies on the concept of memory and memorialization. And this is the one that I try to look at those concepts with the help of digital media. In this research, we focus on a specific monument in Izmir, which is dedicated to Atatürk, the founder of Turkish Republic, his mother, and his contribution to women's rights. I will be giving some hints of this research during my talk, but it's very recent. We recently started doing it, so it's going to be just, let me say, snaps of what we have done so far and some comments, maybe some images. I will try to explain some concepts by using some examples from this monument too. And the last one is an augmented reality application research project that I currently coordinate. In this one, we aim to explore the effects of different modes of representation on remembering through an AR application which will be developed for the Temple of Artemis in Izmir, Turkey. This one is probably the one which takes our most of our time and attention nowadays, since the Temple of Artemis, which is hardly visible in its site right now, was probably, you know, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. And the results of this research, we hope, will provide the local municipality with a good plan for its reconstruction in digital media. On this Friday, we're going to have our first excursion to the site, and we're going to meet with the local administrative departments, the members of the administrative departments. And I hope that it will be an interesting introduction for our research for, let me say, more digitally advanced sides of them, like augmented reality project that we try to create here. So I guess all these projects seem very different from one another in terms of methodology that we use in the research process, or in terms of the architectural object that we deal with. But in fact, for us, in all of them, we question the same thing. Because the main focus in all of them, which is at the same time the focus of our Space and Digital Culture Research Group, is the reproduction of space in digital media. So I would like to start my talk at this point with opening up how we understand this subject for you a little bit in order to lay a good ground for the whole presentation today. The production of space, I don't know if you are familiar with the, probably you are, with the writer and the book, as a theoretical framework was first explained by French sociologist Henri Lefebvre, whom you can see his picture here. And just beside him, the book cover on the left-hand side is the cover of the English translation of the book. And on the right-hand side, you see the Turkish translation book cover. I especially like the Turkish one for this book because the image on the cover explains his theory very well to me. For Lefebvre, social space is a social product, and it is not a passive container of subjects and objects, but a dynamic product which emerges from complicated articulations of spatial practices with textual and visual representations, like the intricate layers of the Turkish cover image that you can see here. According to him, according to Lefebvre, space is the outcome of a complex production process that involves 3 interrelated layers: spatial practices, representations of space, and representational space. Spatial practice refers to spatial perceptions, what you see here, in the commonsensical mode, while regulating life, it embodies close association with perceived space between daily reality and urban reality. Representations of space, what you see here, on the other hand, involve such formalized mental representations, such as drawings, projects, maps, plans, and models of planners, architects, all of whom identify what is perceived with what is conceived. And the last one, this one, representational spaces or spaces of representation is the layer which is lived through images, imaginations, and symbols. This is the layer in which the meaning is directly defined by the mental representations of users' own experiences. Lefebvre, this part is very important because Lefebvre insists that none of these levels is either autonomous or has priority over the others, and that the perceived, this one, conceived, and lived triad loses all force if it is treated as an abstract model. He argues, Lefebvre argues that, I'm quoting right now, it is reasonable to assume that spatial practice, representations of space, and representational spaces contribute in different ways to the production of space, according to their qualities and attributes, according to the society or mode of production in question, and according to the historical period. Some part of it is not visible, sorry, because of the image, probably. So if our perception of space, for instance, equals to the word habitat, so consider this as the habitat itself, and our conception of it to the ways the architects and planners produce scientific discourses about this very habitat and how they imagine it as a finished built form, which is perceived one. The lived space amounts to inhabiting, which before or else is an activity, a situation. It is where the people's less formal or more local forms of knowledge of their built environment come into play. Let me explain this very theoretical understanding of production of space with an example that we nowadays deal with in our research group that I explained, just briefly introduced at the very beginning of my presentation. What we see here is the image is Atatürk, his mother and woman rights monument, situated on the coastline of Karşıyaka, which is one of the upper income districts of Izmir, the city I live. The monument was opened in 1973 with a public ceremony after a year-long construction process based on a selected project of a national competition opened in 1971 for the 50th anniversary of foundation of Republic of Turkey. Designed by sculptor Tamer Başoğlu and architect Erkan Güngören, the monument consisted of three main parts. The first part, which is this one, is a landscape arrangement pivoting around the monument defined with flower beds. The second part is composed of white stalagmite plaques that seem to emerge from the landscape and represent, according to the designers of the monument, 6 foundational principles of Atatürk's ideology. And the last part is a bronze belt that you can see here that braces the stalagmite plaques. And in designers' words, the first 2 parts of the monument narrate the improvements of the women's rights from Ottoman Empire to Republic of Turkey, and the growing presence of the woman in social, cultural, and political life. And the bronze figures here you can see in detail on the belt represent both the most important contribution of women to the society. This is Atatürk himself represented, and his mother right beside him, and some other women doing daily works or like reading, working, etc. So all these figures on the belt represent both the most important contribution of women to the society and the new rights that the women acquire thanks to Atatürk. So what we have seen so far are the designer's own perspective of this monument, and also how it is perceived when you go to space, the real site of memory. When we check the location of the monument on social media, on the other hand, we see thousands of images that combine the context of the monument with the visitor's own produced contents by using hashtags, comments, descriptions, and images of their own, their vehicles, daily practices, and the like. These everyday life rituals represent individuals' own interactions with the space as part of their personal memories. They mostly happen instantaneously, involve daily practices like jogging or strolling, and utilize the monument just as a background. When we survey, for instance, 553 comments on the geotech location of the monument in Google Maps, we see that a considerable number of them narrate personal histories related to the monument. One comment, for instance, is as follows. It's where my daughter and son skated 30 years ago. Now my 9-year-old granddaughter too. Our life has passed here. So these comments enable users not only record their personal memories online, but also reproduce the space itself with new meanings. Especially due to its particular location, for instance, it's very interesting, near the coastline. Photos of the cod fishes create a considerable percentage of these reproductions and constitute an important daily ritual in which the digital media creates the main representational platform. Depending on the advances in digital technologies, the growing usage of locational data on social media platforms has enabled new identity processes like the ones that you see here on this slide, practiced through online documentation of personal lives and spatial mobility. Individuals' access to a variety of multimedia tools provided by social media enables the possibility for more controlled and more imaginative performances of selves online, like these ones, like very imaginative, like you, yourself, and your caught fish. In other words, with new digital culture today, the process of production of space is not only based on how space was conceived by the designers or how its physical attributes are experienced on the actual site, but also how it is directly lived with individuals' own digital identity performances, as it is called by Lefebvre representational space. These performances, as Andre Hoskins, a professor on digital memory, indicates in his article, can be considered as, I'm quoting, new ways to remember and to give meaning to their location history as an active force in their everyday life. End of the quote. Or in Jason Parman's words, new interfaces of everyday life. Or similarly in Jeff Rich's words, transmedia stories. Today, I'm not going to talk about very much this monument, even though it's very interesting. I'm going to give you some images and comments in the presentation, but my main focus will be on this Mavi Bahçe shopping center, because I will talk about transmedia stories, let me say, which take place in the digital media of this particular shopping center, Mavi Bahçe it is called. And when we look at Instagram photos checked in at this shopping center, we notice striking similarities. That was exactly our starting point. That's why I really wanted to point on this fact. Because when we just check the location in Instagram, we found, yes, a lot of photos, but most of them have these similarities in terms of the spatial arrangements that the people use. Most of the visitors tend to pose at specific locations in the shopping center, and the spatial qualities that they prefer to frame as background in these images highly resemble each other. Due to advances in mobile technologies, and especially in consequence of locational data's integration into social media, we see that individuals have started to share their locations with their followers on their personal accounts frequently, not only in this shopping center, but almost everywhere, right, in the world. Especially before this pandemics, because pandemics changed almost, almost all of our daily habits. But before that, broadcasting visuals from the places these visitors visit, or creating spatial settings for online display and establishing associations between these places and their personal identities on social media turned into a daily habit. Individuals' access to a variety of multimedia tools provided by social media made a more controlled and more imaginative online self-performances possible. Eric Goffman's The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life was a very, very important book, especially for us at the beginning of this research, because we know from Goffman's book onwards, I'm quoting from him directly, when an individual appears before others, he or she will have many motives for trying to control the impression they receive of the situation. In this process, end of the quote, in this process, space undertakes new tasks to provide a scenery and stage for personal identity practices and a way to demonstrate affiliations to certain social sphere and lifestyle. This is the book cover of Presentation of Self in Everyday Life. Especially in this book, Goffman argues that identity is primarily related to the society's behavioral expectations from an individual and society's influence on each individual's social roles, on their effort for performing of each role, and on how well it is performed. Individuals have various identities, it's not just one, various of them, to invoke various roles, to adapt to diverse social involvements. As such, identity is not only related to the question of who am I, but also to the question of who should I be now? Needless to say, just as conventional ways of interactions require individuals to manage their identities, so do their online presentations. In today's world of constant connectivity, in which places of online and offline lives converge most of the time in our daily practice, it is not possible to talk about separated offline or online identities. Rather, today's identity performances of individuals should be called, according to Sage Elwell, digital analog self-identity, in other words, transmediated identity practices. Elwell defines transmediated self as, I'm quoting, the complex story world of identity lived in the gap between the digital and the analog, between the virtual and the real. Social media provides individuals with an interface to construct user profiles that express their personalities and ideas and share their lives with others by using the given tools for online expressive performances and, most importantly, situational contexts. Right at this moment, I want to go back to this monument, because I think it has a spatial importance in terms of this focus. Social media provides individuals with an interface to construct user profiles that express their personalities and ideas and share their lives with others by using the given tools. Yes, that's true. As you can see in these images, the monument dedicated to the founder of Republic of Turkey and his pioneering approach to the place of moment in the society, in which you may guess nowadays new forms of country-wide social and political conflicts have appeared in this site, becomes a background to represent a political stance. So this expressive dimension of social network sites enables identity negotiation and identity expression, which are both socially shaped and socially shaping. With each shared content, individuals can access public reaction in the form of social approval and acceptance mediated electronically via the interfaces of social network sites. What we see here, for instance, is a kind of attempt to have that approval in terms of political stance too. Because all identity performances require a setting, Goffman puts it as follows, I'm quoting, "There is the setting involving furniture, decor, physical layout, and other background items which supply the scenery and stage props for the spate of human action played out before, within, or upon it. A setting tends to stay put, geographically speaking, so that those who would use a particular setting as part of their performance cannot begin their act until they have brought themselves to the appropriate place and must terminate their performance when they leave it." So according to Goffman, this is the identity production process is completely a performance, and the person who wants to have that identity makes that performance, and that person also uses the whole setting, the space itself, as part of the decor of that identity. The setting for the construction of online identity on social media sites is arranged by using the palette's textual and visual features such as comments, description, videos, and photos, but above all, locational tagging and shared data in those tagged spaces. But what we call locative media can be considered as the, I'm quoting, "combination of location-based technologies and location-based services," and it creates hyperconnectivity between physical and digital space. Through checking in at certain places on social network sites, the users attempt to manage their identities, depending on with which social commonalities they want to be associated by their target audience in terms of socioeconomic status, tastes, and or values. These commonalities can be weaved through the theoretical framework of the term habitus, drawn by another French intellectual, Pierre Bourdieu. People who share similar social backgrounds tend to share similar norms or codes, which define their limits of actions and the way they act in certain circumstances. Thus, they share similar ways of looking at the world and of operating in it. The term habitus is based on these shared norms. Some scholars indicate that habitus is practiced on social media as digital habitus through certain acts to redefine the cultural codes in line with the new media utilization. These acts can be considered as attempts to get positive feedback. This is the most important part. So all these acts are just there to have that positive feedback from their audience and to gain recognition for their digital identities. In other words, success on social media. The narrative biography displayed through the accumulation of these post-zone profile and constructed in the converged space of physical and digital is used to not only represent, but also construct the identity. If we go back to Mavi Bahçe, sorry, it's in Mavişehir. It's also in Karşıyaka, by the way. The monument and this shopping center are in close vicinity. It's in the same district. The act of broadcasting places is an international and corrected practice performed by the users, like we see in the courtyard of Mavi Bahçe Shopping Center here in this post. The purpose is to show who they are based on which kinds of places they prefer to be in. However, this act might also include their idealized perception of themselves in accordance with their desire of who they want to be. Individuals do not prefer to share every place, for instance, that they have been. Rather, they consider their every activity as a footprint in social media carefully and share only certain places with their audiences because they prefer to be associated with specific places in line with their habitus, so that they only display appropriate aspects of themselves to the others. So space here is not only associated with the where of something, it includes, I'm quoting, the location plus everything that occupies that location seen as an integrated and meaningful phenomenon. End of the quote. What you see in these slides are selfie spots in Mavi Bahçe. These spaces are specifically designed to take selfies. And it has been done by the administration of this shopping center, and it is also promoted by the same administration with their official social media account. So the use of locational data on social media has changed the waves of attachment to spaces, interaction with the surroundings, feeling of belonging to a space, and how space is perceived and what it means to its inhabitants. The locations are no longer bound to merely physicality of space. On the contrary, they are the new process of integration, which merges digital and physical dimensions to one another and creates new senses of space. For most of individuals, being present at certain places is an action which needs to be shared with others online. So it has no meaning if you are there, if you spend your time there at those selfie points, because those are selfie spots. If you are there, people feel that they need to share that their presence there. So they attempt to make sure that the name of these places and their specific elements are displayed so that the others will notice their presence at these places. The user's controlling of social media in order to manage where to check in and what to share about that space are curated acts of intentional display in line with the influence of their digital habitus. Now I will start showing some data visualizations from our research in order to understand this influence, the influence of these sharings in their digital habitus in scope of the study. We asked Mavi Bahçe visitors about their Instagram preferences in a questionnaire. 135 participants of the questionnaire were recruited through social media sites like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by means of snowball sampling technique. And young women under 40s constitute the majority, and the proportional number of the visitors' age and gender of the shopping center But we found this very parallel to the situation because like the young woman under 40s create the majority of the visitors of this shopping center. The responses to the questions regarding their preferences are classified through a grid system that you can see here, composed of questions, these horizontal rows, and the participants' answers, those are the vertical rows, and the color shade indicates the changes of the quantity of each answer on the horizontal row, and the yellow rectangles, or let me say orange rectangles, group the most preferred answers for each question. The question 7, for instance, reveals that 54% of the users of Mavi Bahçe think the places where they post reflect their lifestyle. We found, for instance, very interesting. This is the total number of the majority of the group. Or if you look at question 9, you see that 39% of the users share a similar point of view by identifying a social media account with its owner's lifestyle. So these answers reveal that visitors of Mavi Bahçe make interpretations about the others in accordance with their location check-ins on Instagram and speculate about their places within the digital habitus. Another case occurred in identity practices of social media is the act of display. Instagram has evoked the competition between its users in terms of provoking acts of show-off. As these acts are performed through display of check-ins and visualizations of the spatial atmosphere at the background in the photos, the aim is to gain recognition and social approval of the audience on Instagram by presenting spatial mobility. These presentations of mobility do not include any random location, but they consist of carefully highlighted visualizations and portrayal of the selves with the places. Question 8, for instance, shows 42% of the visitors of Mavi Bahçe check their social media accounts regularly, their own social media accounts regularly, to see how their profiles look. So it's not just one instance. So it's not just one post. People tend to create their profiles with the accumulation of their posts. So it creates a kind of a visual narrative. This statement is an indication of their urge to go over their own social media accounts to see whether it aligns with their visions on their constructed identities. These locational performances share aesthetic concerns on whether the self-presentation on Instagram is in line with the idealized version of the self, which aims to fit in the current digital habitus, or a desired one. As the responses of the second question, this one, show 48 of the participants feel good when they check in at a nice place. In addition, in the question 5, which is here, 50% indicate if they are having a good time, they share it on social media. Each person's Instagram main page includes the posts which are shared by the users they follow online, and they all perform mostly within the same digital habitus, which means that their social interests and choices have similar. Seeing a friend's check-in on Instagram main page can arouse interest in that place. For instance, this is a particular spot. In shopping centers, we identified it as the most preferred one, probably because of the aesthetic qualities of the background and also because of this tower. Because Izmir, the symbol of Izmir, the city of Izmir, is an architectural object. It's clock tower in Konak. It's not in Karşıyaka. In Konak, it's in the historical region. And the the administrators of this shopping center like advertises this space with the presence of this clock tower, because they say that they use this, let me translate it directly, they use this phrase, İzmir is inside Mavi Bahçe. So they think that this is a kind of an echo of the real clock tower in the shopping center, probably because of the symbolic effect of this image also. This background is really preferred by the visitors of the space. So these people, like the girl that we see here, they tend to check in, share the photos of themselves in those particular spots, because they try to arouse even more interest in their own digital habitus, because it can make users think that this place is preferred by the others who might share similar tastes with, so they think that they might also enjoy spending time there. This shows that in the case of Mavi Bahçe, the visitors who share similar habitus might cluster in some certain locations. When some visitors of Mavi Bahçe are given to choose multiple preferences for places where they often prefer checking in, while 70% of the users have selected the option of restaurants and cafes, 50 of them has preferred the locations at Mavi Bahçe where its courtyard can be framed at the background. So courtyard, as you may guess, is very popular. If we look at the answers given to the question in which the participants are asked to select restaurants and cafes out of 44, there's 44 restaurant cafes, different ones in total, as their favorite places at Mavi Bahçe, 3 places come to the fore with noticeably high percentage. Starbucks, Big Chefs, Midpoint, these are local brands, famous but like upper income restaurants. But as you can see, Starbucks is the winner. When we look at the top 2 preferred check-in places on Instagram and pair this result with this one and this one, preferred restaurant and cafe preferences, the 2 certain locations stand out. Mavi Bahçe's courtyard, and in the restaurants and cafes, Starbucks. When we look at the images shared by the users were gathered from Starbucks Instagram location interface at Mavi Bahçe day long, we see an obvious resemblance in these photographs too, in terms of similar photographing preferences in highlighting, that's very interesting, Starbucks coffee cups, and or to pose for the photos with almost the same body language, which foregrounds the product with its logo and the place. Turkish sociologist Kahraman asserts that online demonstrations of Starbucks coffee transformed the activity of drinking coffee in Turkey into a symbol of prestige. As the biggest coffee chain in Turkey, Starbucks, I guess in Europe, Turkey has the in terms of number, the most populated, let me say, Starbucks restaurants. As far as I know, even in Izmir, we have more than 20 Starbucks. So as the biggest coffee chain in Turkey, Starbucks has a coffee shop, sometimes 2 in almost all shopping centers in the country. That's very interesting too. For instance, in most of the shopping centers, Mavi Bahçe is one of the biggest ones, but there are some similar ones too. Not 1, but 2 Starbucks coffee shops are there. So Kahraman claims that for Turkish consumers, coffee is not seen as a symbol drink anymore, but it is used for symbolic social ends like prestige or luxury. And in his research, Kahraman indicates that 73% of the participants have stated that they make location check-ins when they are in Starbucks, especially the young adults. As these geotagged photos like this one are shared on the user's Instagram profile, the Starbucks coffee cup's meaning is recognized within the digital habitus, and it is used by users to associate their transmediated identity with Starbucks. The space itself per se here, in other words, being present in Starbucks, take precedence over the activity of drinking coffee and the quality time. The production of spatial self through representational space becomes more important than the actual spatial practice here. The user's attempts on the matter can be revealed clearly through the similarities of how the users prefer to pose for the photos and their body languages, as you can see here. What makes these photos even more interesting is the fact that the spatial symbol of Mavi Bahçe Shopping Center, its courtyard, is mostly preferred as the background setting by the users. While picturing themselves holding their Starbucks coffee cups, they use Starbucks semi-approach porch extending into the central garden rather than the interior space, because it has a very interesting space, interior space too, which has most of the design elements of Starbucks conceived spatial identity, varying from, lighting equipment or the furniture. In the social production of space, what we see here, representational spatial qualities of the Starbucks open area in Mavi Bahçe outweighed its conceived spatial qualities. Indeed, regarding the visitors' photos, the preference of framing the courtyard, again, we see the courtyard here in the background of the photos, setting for themselves appears as a highly common act. As in the example of Starbucks and how its logo is used to signify the user's presence in the coffee shop itself, Mavi Bahçe's courtyard is similarly used to highlight their presence at the shopping center by using its spatial symbol as their Instagram photo background. The photos shown in the slide are the samples gathered from Instagram location interface of Mavi Bahçe during a week. As the courtyard is the spatial symbol of this, Mavi Bahçe, by the way, I forgot to talk about it. In Turkish, Mavi means blue, Bahçe is the garden. So Mavi Bahçe, in fact, means blue garden. So the garden is not blue, but blue is also the name of the district, because this Mavi Bahçe is in the district called Mavi Şehir, or Blue City, let me say. So it's a kind of a combination with the name of the district and the function itself, which is Bahçe, garden. So the courtyard is important even in the name of this shopping center. So the presence of this courtyard in these photos shows that its courtyard is used as an instrument for location display on Instagram by the users too. Since being present in Mavi Bahçe refers to belonging to upscale lifestyle, resembling with the district itself, because district is a high upper income inhabitants district too. So their attempt is to ensure that their identities will gain recognition within their habitus. In managing what to present on social media, where to check in, and what to share about a space as new ways of identity practices, hashtags also become one of the most popular tools. So we surveyed the hashtags used with these posts in Instagram too. And this diagram shows the groups of most used hashtags in Instagram by the visitors of Mavi Bahçe Shopping Center. And as they are user-generated tags that enable online data search and reach out to the other people who tend to use them, they have the potential of connecting individuals who share certain similarities online. So the preferred hashtags that we see here, used under Instagram posts, like the ones we see, can indicate both what kind of information Mavi Bahçe visitors prefer to highlight through their shared photos to be reached out by the others online, and how the visitors attempt to produce their spatial selves. First most preferred hashtag group is here, is composed of Instagram's common popular hashtags like follow for follow, like for like, Instamood, Instadaily, TBT. So those kind of popular Instagram tags has the majority. The second most preferred hashtag group consists of location indicators, such as like this one, Mavi Bahçe, İzmir. AVM is the short version of shopping center in Turkish. Following that, information about the spatial activities of the users and how they spend their time at Mavi Bahçe comes to the fore as the third group of the most preferred hashtags. These top 3 results that are revolving around popular hashtags to get more followers and likes. So broadcasting the location's name and displaying the presence at a certain spaces and the user's emphasis on their spatial activities, like kahve keyfi means enjoying coffee, or gezmeler means strolling, or alışveriş means shopping. So the activity itself clearly show that location carries noticeably high importance for individuals on their self-presentation and their spatial mobility. In the process of the production of spatial self, visitors want to be associated with only certain attributes of spaces. This was one of the most interesting results of our research. When we found it, we were really surprised. So with only certain attributes of spaces online, while they prefer not to share the attributes that they do not find favorable. So to shed light on this situation in the study, the questionnaire participants were asked to describe Mavi Bahçe with 5 keywords. So we asked them to use 5 keywords to define their experience in Mavi Bahçe, to name the spatial attributes which they would have designed differently, and to decide on their most favorite spatial qualities of Mavi Bahçe. So regarding the preferred keywords, the diagram here shows that 27.6% of the total words chosen by the participants are negative. That was very interesting for us, because when we just asked them to define their spatial experiences, it was interesting that they used some negative aspects of the space. Like they said crowded, they said noisy, they said overwhelming, expensive, kitsch, big, massive, monotonous, unnecessary. Whereas none of the posts checked in at Mavi Bahçe Geotech within 1 week period that we especially focused on for the whole hashtags included any of these negative content. They used just positive content. All the posts shared within this period were associated with either informative or affirmative hashtags, which can be grouped under the titles such as the name of the place, friendship, food, holiday, love, brands. So we didn't see any negative feedback in those hashtags. Regarding the questions of the questionnaire, participants' thoughts on spatial attributes of Mavi Bahçe, the responses show that Mavi Bahçe's open areas and green courtyard are their most favorite architectural qualities. Furthermore, 31% of the participants indicated that their, here it is, most preferred place for photo background setting is the courtyard. This is something that we ask them independent from the information that we gathered from Instagram. So there was this, the information were parallel to one another. So they preferred green courtyard as the background, and when they were asked, they said that green courtyard is their most preferred place in the shopping center. These responses overlap with the results discussed above. So they were affirmative. However, there are other spatial attributes of Mavi Bahçe that cannot be seen online through its location interface. This is what you see here, is one of the photos that I took when I was there. When you check the location on Instagram, you can never find any image of the outer facade of the shopping center. This is from its outer facade, and this is just one part of the shopping center. So there is no information about the outer facade on social media. Even though its facade is one of the most distinct spatial qualities of Mavi Bahçe shopping center, the audience on Instagram is not exposed to this fact. If you look at participants' answer to the questionnaire, especially to the question of which spatial attributes they would have designed differently. So we asked them directly, if you were the architect, what would have you designed differently in this building? As can be seen in this diagram, the facade is the first one. Unsurprisingly, maybe. The participants pointed out that they would have designed the facade differently in terms of color, lighting, and ornamentation if they had the chance. Based on these findings, it is possible to claim that as the visitors do not define the facade as their one of the favorite spatial attributes of Mavi Bahçe, they deliberately avoid from sharing it online as their photo background. In the production of their spatial selves, they refrain from being associated with unfavorable qualities of the space itself. So what you see on the slide are two different views of the same shopping center, Mavi Bahçe. However, if you know the space just through the social media posts of not only the visitors, but also even the administrators of the official Instagram account of the shopping center, you may never recognize the building if you see it outside. In conclusion, one of the most interesting results of our research is that since individuals choose what to share and what not to share, they filter their spatial data and or define them by using only affirmative hashtags, as they prefer to present their digital identities in the most appropriate way to the others. The visitors who share their locational data through checking in at certain places by defining these photos with their own captions and hashtags think that locational check-ins and spatial attributes framed as photo background give insights on someone's habitus. Therefore, they tend to exclude the spatial aspects they regard with disfavor online. As individuals tend to exclude the spatial parts that they regard with disfavor, this kind of spatial presentation does not reflect the actual physical attributes of the space. Sorry. Space is digitally produced through the preferences of the user's spatial identity processes. Moreover, the spatial exclusions can influence the other visitor's experience within space. By checking in at certain locations, visitors tell their audience online which places are worth visiting and being shared online. as every Instagram user's main page contains posts from the people they follow, they share or wish to share the same digital habitus with their Instagram followings. As a result, the locations where their followings are checked in can arouse their interests. Undoubtedly, what I presented today has been just limited to the case of this shopping center. In other words, to the visitor's experience of a particular socioeconomic class. So in our research group, we plan to expand this analysis with a wider spectrum of places, such as public spaces like the one that you see here, the monument, Atatürk, His Mother and Women Rights Monument, some open spaces, squares, streets, especially spaces from different socioeconomic statuses. Comparing the results of such analysis will provide probably deeper insights. However, in any case, the results of this study revealed that the changing role of space and its attributes for the construction of transmediated identities and underscore how the production of spatial self through digital media creates new ways for production of self itself. The convergence of physical and digital space through locational data has not only enriched the settings for the construction of identity by the palette's diverse textual and visual features, even, moving images, but also provided individuals with more opportunities to reproduce spaces with their own images and symbols, where representational space in Leffer's terms takes precedence over, especially both conceived and perceived ones more than ever. So this so far has been the things that I wanted to especially discuss with you today. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that it was interesting for all of you. Thank you, Ingo. Thank you.
That was indeed really, really interesting. Thank you very much, Ahenk, for your talk. Yeah, and now the discussion is open, but I guess Eric, you would manage the discussion. Okay?
Sure.
Okay, I can do so. So David is first.
Okay, thank you, and thank you very much for the talk. That's really a good continuation, I would say, of a theme that we had here in this colloquium quite a lot, which is digital platforms. And this is also at least part of my question. And my broader question, I guess, aims at the potential bias that you get in your study. You already pointed out that you chose very specific places. So you get people with a specific habitus and specific practices, if you will, of spatial reproduction. But more than that, you also have a bias because you choose people who use Instagram as a platform, as a medium, if you will, to do this. And not only people who use Instagram, but people who use it in very specific ways. Right? They check in at a specific location, which probably not everybody does. People who publicly share their images. And so you get a highly specific practice of spatial reproduction in digital media. And so my question is just how would you broaden this, and how would the same story maybe of Mavi Bahçe look on Twitter, on Facebook? What do people do, who do not share their images, or who do not check in at these places, and so forth?
Okay, yeah. First of all, yes, the focus of this research was very, very specific. We really just focused on one shopping center and also one, we discussed it a lot, by the way, one social media application, not for instance, Twitter or Facebook, but Instagram. We had some motives to do that. The first one is that we knew that the main group of the visitors of this shopping center is a particular certain age interval, like around, let me say, mostly women, and women around 20s, 30s, maybe early 40s, the major group. And we considered especially what is the main application that this group generally use in Turkey. And I can easily say that it is Instagram. So Twitter is not that much widely used, especially by the younger group of what we try to understand in this population. And Facebook, that's very interesting, maybe it's the same in Germany too, belongs to the older group of the population. So we chose Instagram specifically to be able to address the most of the visitors of this shopping center. For instance, for the monument, the Karşıyaka monument that I showed, the Atatürk, his mother and women rights monument, that now we're collecting the info. We will be using Instagram too, but rather than Instagram, mostly, probably we will be using Google Maps and the comments there. So I may say that we use or we choose the application that we to collect the information, the main information of how digital space is created, according to the group that we are going to deal with in that specific location. So for instance, we have another research also going on. It's not directly right now related to digital media, but it is going to be probably in the future sometime. It's a regeneration space. It's Ballıkuyu, it's called. It's right now especially lower income group is the main inhabitants, and they are subject to kick out from this particular place, and it is going to be renovated. So the municipalities say that they are going to be inhabited in the same place, but the projects are not that much certain. So there is this really big discussion going on about that project. And we plan to use, for instance, their closed Facebook account to collect the main information from the digital media. So I can say that we decide on the application according to the group that we deal with mostly. But sure, the question is in the air. So what about the ones who are not using digital media at all? Yes, that's something that we need to discuss for sure, and probably. Especially for the research about this monument, we need to make some questionnaires and maybe semi-structured interviews on the site itself. But since we are dealing mostly with how the space is digitally produced by the users themselves, with their comments and their imaginations and their own digital productions, that's not in our focus at the moment right now very much, I may say. So we're already interested in how it is digitally reproduced. So yes, the ones who are not sharing anything, especially, for instance, in the shopping center, are not in our radar right now, I may say.
All right, just a very quick follow-up, and you don't need to answer this now, but when you do this, an interesting thing would be which kind of place is represented on what platform, and how does the platform shape how certain places are represented? So these are things that I would like you to pursue.
Okay, I mean, it's changing, you know. Yeah, let me add one more thing. I mean, you know, TikTok is very popular, especially in the teenagers right now, and that's something that we couldn't deal with yet, because, you know, TikTok is really different from all other applications. It has no locational tagging option, so it's just, you know, sharing photos, videos, and mostly the voice itself. So we for instance don't know yet how we're going to deal with that information, honestly. So it's changing a lot, so we need to be very, you know, updated all the time. Our methods, especially approaches to the information produced in digital media. I personally couldn't imagine any way to analyze TikTok data yet. I don't know if you have found a way. I will be really happy to hear it.
No, I think we don't have yet, but time is running, and next is Ingo.
I'd like to talk a bit more about this tendency of taking nice pictures, because that's a tendency which is much more encompassing than with social media alone, because nearly everybody who went to vacation somewhere waited some time that people go away so that you have a nice picture, or choosing a nice angle and so on. So this is a phenomenon that is much more broader, and I guess it's not only about identity, but it's more broader. I don't want to go too much into this aspect, but I want to ask you the following. It gets a new dimension in the moment that these pictures are used for annotating places, because now there occurs this back and forth between the reality observed at the physical space and the digital representation. And so if there's this tendency to take nice pictures, and these nice pictures are more and more annotated to places, and people are using these annotations to get a picture about the place before they are visiting themselves. So there should be kind of a phenomenon of dissonance, something like that. Yeah, and so if we believe that the physical space is co-produced with the digital representations, this should be some kind of interesting. This should be interesting in some way. How people will deal with this phenomenon. I don't know if you have ideas about this aspect of taking nice pictures.
Yeah, it's not only nice pictures, but I really, since I'm architect, I'm really interested in, from the beginning onwards. Sure, I mean, how those spaces are digitally represented is important, but I always wondered if those digital representations at the end change the physical space's own experiences in return. That I found very interesting.
One option would be that people are more disappointed when they are visiting the actual places.
Yeah, I mean,
because
yes,
the expectations get higher.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in terms of just sharing the nice parts, like, I mean, especially in terms of touristic gaze, you know, with that touristic gaze, people tend to capture just the beautiful parts of those spaces. So yes, probably it would be disappointing, but more than that, it would be shaping the spatial experience itself too. For instance, we also tend to, just years ago, let me say 3 or 4 years ago, we tended to make an analysis. It hasn't been like developed very well yet, but about Gallipoli, peninsula and its memorials and commemoration sites. We looked at some applications used for that peninsula and the remembering experience in that peninsula specifically. For instance, one of the most interesting things that we found, there is, I couldn't pronounce, it's New Zealander language, Aboriginal language, maybe, I don't know. There is this particular application used by Anzacs, especially New Zealanders, to visit Gallipoli Peninsula. And what we found that in that application, most of the monuments of the Turkish side are not there, are not designated in the application. That's why we realized that most of the tourists, just to come to see the peninsula and the battlefield and the monuments on those battlefields, missed some of them just because the application hasn't had any of those locations in itself. It's not showing. So what I'm trying to say, yes, I mean, going to the site, seeing just, taking just beautiful things as a picture, and then sharing them online. So creating a huge expectation would be very disappointing for those who, visit the physical space in reality. But moreover, some digital applications, not maybe social media applications, but some digital applications do have the potential to really form the experience itself in the physical space, because people tend to believe in digital applications even more than what they see, right? I mean, there is this tendency. So they think that if it's not in the application, so it's not there, it shouldn't be there. Like, I mean, there is this saying, if it's not in the Google, probably it doesn't exist, right? It's the same. If it's not in the application of that particular place, it shouldn't be there. So it creates our spatial experience on the physical space too. That I found very, very interesting.
We have some similar findings in our data from the locative media project. Yes. I would ask another question, but maybe you want to.
Yeah, so go on. Okay.
Okay.
So Tim withdraw, so you can ask another question.
Okay. Just this observation of yours that there was this difference between no negative characterizations when you asked your participants in your questionnaire, but nearly 30%. No, other way around. Nearly 30% negative characterizations in your questionnaire, but no negative characterizations in the hashtag. So yeah, I would like to ask you to go a bit more into this this finding, because you assume that the authentic reaction was what you get back in the questionnaire, so that what is represented by hashtags is kind of a distortion of what people actually think about the place. So what is the reason for this distortion between this bias? And if I understand you rightly, you focused on the function of self presentation and the need of a positive self-presentation,
yeah.
which would be, the argument would be that there's a high identification with what people present, so they present the place positive and by this present themselves positively. But another reason,
it's about the experience, right? I mean, it's about the experience. I don't think that they try to present the space itself with positive terms, but they try to represent their time in that space, their experience in that space with positive terms. You know, the psychologists probably, there are some, I don't know if you follow, but there are some books about this, you know, personal development, etc. In that track, for instance, psychologists do insist that do not believe in everything you see in social media, because you may easily get depressed, because you may think that, oh, everybody is having great time, I'm the only one who is crying here, right? So it's a general tendency. I mean, I cannot explain its, you know, psychological reasons, but what we see in the space is that space is the, I mean, I like that word of Goffman's very much. It's a setting, it's a stage, right? I mean, for that person, it's the stage. It's a stage for his or her performance. So he wants to perform with, you know, positive feedback, and if the stage is not coping with the same experience, that person cannot use it. So it's the stage itself, it's the setting, it's the decor. So it is the same mentality that people tend to share as if they are the happiest person in the world, as if they are having the most quality time in the world. So space is a kind of an integrated element of that performance. That's very interesting. So when they talk about the shopping centers, they generally use these words like, I mean, it's a big space, the building is too huge, it's ugly. So especially they, for instance, complain about the crowdedness of the space. But when they start sharing about the space, since it's part of their performance, they tend to use its best, brightest sides all the time. It's again about the ego, you know, it's about the self, how they show themselves to the others.
Yes, I totally agree, but there could be other stories that of self-presentation that does not need to present the space positively. It's just one kind of story that is told here, and the reason would be why it's only this one kind of story. Another kind of story could be, oh, I am the hero that showed that there's something very wrong there.
Yeah, that's true. And you know what? For instance, that's why the first question David asked it. I think it might be a kind of a response to that question too. Like, for instance, if it's about complaining about a space, like if they are complaining about the garbage in particular park, what you see in the location tagging is the pictures, thousands of pictures of that garbage. So I guess it's about the context. Yeah, I mean, since this is the shopping center, this is the case. But if I'm pretty sure that if we go to look at some, for instance, the place that I talked about, like Ballıkuyu, it's a lower income space, and right now it's, you know, degrading, especially in terms of the derelict houses, because most of the houses are derelict right now. So I'm pretty sure that we haven't done it yet, but I'm pretty sure that if we check the locational tagging, especially in Facebook, we're going to find not nice pictures of the space. I mean, it's going to be the contrary. So it depends on the context very much, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. Time is up, but I have still some little questions. So I'm absolutely convinced that the people who share these pictures on Instagram are part of, they represent the digital habitus of upscale middle class people. At the same time, I wonder, maybe other people from other social entities, other social groups, they don't choose this particular place as background, but the body language of posing yourself and all these other aspects, maybe it's not just the digital habitus of just this upscale middle class, but I think it's probably a much wider phenomenon you can find in other social groups as well. So, but that's why I'm excited about your future work. Then you can compare these pictures and see what is part of the digital habitus of the middle class people, on what is really the digital habitus of other social groups. So yeah, time is up, but if you want to say some words about your future work.
Yeah, just some words maybe. I mean, this is the one that we focus on right now, because this shopping center has already, we done it, so we published it. So for instance, if you look at these pictures, this is from the monument that I was talking about. Again, some similar posing habits. So it's not about, you know, having this higher income, belonging to higher income group. It's something else right now. That is this ritual. It creates its own ritual, and having that pose with the codfish is part of that ritual. So our plan is to look at it from that keyword in this research. So what about the rituals? What kind of new rituals arise with this digital media reproductions of space? Yeah, that's exactly what we are also focusing on, and what we are really excited about.
Ahenk, it was a pleasure to have you here, and
thank you very much.
We keep in touch. So next week, I don't know if do you want to say something about next week's colloquium, Ingo?
No, next week is the Institutskolloquium. So
okay, so Ahenk, again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Yeah, thank you from me too. It was great to have you here, and this is a bit an advantage and a disadvantage of Zoom times, I would say.
Yeah,
it's the advantage. Otherwise, we wouldn't have met you this semester, neither in Izmir nor in Berlin virtually. So both was possible, and this is great. But it would be better, obviously, to meet face to face.
Yeah, hope to see you, meet you in person in the future.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, and
goodbye, and have a nice night.
Yeah. Goodbye.